All right, welcome back. Another exciting week in the world of on-chain audio. Extra exciting for me, having got the collection out finally. It's been a long battle getting here, but it's amazing seeing this. Up there on Gamma on the homepage. It's amazing seeing it up there and seeing how people got right into it. And actually, we're even at the top of the charts on Gamma. I noticed last night, which is again just super cool, but also feels like a little bit of pressure to keep things going. But that actually isn't going to be too hard. I've already got my own songs, queued up and ready to go. Got Freedom coming. This is going to be the big free mint. Really, my hope is to grow the community through this, is to really throw a wider net and really try to get people to see that music NFTs are not dead. I know that seems to be the permeating opinion at the moment. I don't have a problem with that, because I wouldn't be doing what I was doing if I thought that for a moment. But it's just a shame to think that people are sort of misled, and actually the real gems that are going to have a future well beyond our own lifetimes even are right here under our noses. This is earth-shattering stuff going on right here. I think it's interesting when people say music NFTs are dead. It's, for me, they were never alive. This was part of my issue, is that I never found any solution that didn't have some level of pulling of strings, some oversight, some centralization, a token. There was just always something tying people into a specific idea or a specific project, and that was a problem. That was a problem that I couldn't really overcome. And this is as a person, as a musician who's been in this space building for 10 years, looking for these solutions, talking about these solutions, knowing that the promise is there, but just not finding it around every corner. Every time something popped up, it just wasn't the answer. Even the things I was working on, I'm working things through and just realizing as I go, this isn't quite what we need. This isn't what musicians need. This isn't the self-servicing system that they need. And then here we are, Audionals come along, and just like all great market cycles, it's right at the time when everyone's completely given up on it, and finally the real it's different this time solution is right here under everyone's noses. So we trying to time this, got lots of different things going on. We've got the holders of Truth and Obi-Wan. They're going to get I think they get 3 mint passes each for the free mint on Gamma. Then we go to a community whitelist, a bit like last time, although not taking on thousands of wallet addresses, doing it more as a promotional push this time, because this is the point of this collection, is to get it out there. Make it as cheap as we can through doing an inscription this way, through the Gamma's marketplace, so that we can try to excite people with what's possible, and grow the community, and then see where it goes from there. So there is this is a double mint pass for anyone who gets on the whitelist. This is going from the website. I've created a page there which I've tweeted about today, where you can go and you can fill in a form, a hastily created form that I threw together, but I'm pretty sure it's working. It was being a bit tough on the checking the old tweets, but I think I've calmed down the security now, so it should let you post your tweets from either the Twitter or the X domain that show that you've tweeted about on-chain music, that you've added all the accounts that that we're working together to do this, and then just fill the form out, post your tweet, and then we'll be in touch. There is an option to put email in there. Email just makes it a lot easier to communicate, but it's not a necessity. Don't want to upset anybody with the Web 2 stuff there, but it does just speed things up with regards to communication. So I'd love to get people signing on that. The more creative and fun and the more engagement that you get from your posts about Web3 music being very much alive, we'll give a bonus whitelist for. There's space in the second half of the form to just write some information about your community if you're trying to do it. If you want lots of spaces for a community, then give us some information and we'll check it out. It's designed to go out in time with the conference. So the conference starts. Hopefully, when the conference starts, we'll open that first whitelist, the double mint whitelist, so everyone can mint 2 per wallet up until probably 24 hours later, and then we'll go to public on Friday. And then the idea is with the public mint is to run that right through to 2 p.m. on Saturday in Central Time, Nashville time. And I'm just going to play Freedom for you now so you can hear. This is the second song of this Genesis collection of recursive music on Bitcoin Audionals. Quite a crazy technological moment where music and tech really come together in the way that, again, I've been looking for a decade at least. So have a listen to Freedom, and then I'll come back and talk about the relevance of that 2 p.m. cut-off time for the free mint, the open free mint, which will cut off 2 p.m. on Saturday. That will dictate whatever the final supply is of Freedom, but have a listen. This is what's coming.
Freedom to Transact by Ash Lightstone. Freedom to transact is the freedom to be. It means I don't need your permission to do as I please and just be me. It's a freedom that we should all have. Without any conditions we have no say in. There shouldn't be any strings attached or any rhetoric about it being a sin. It's a freedom that allows us all to be equal in a manner that is profoundly meaningful, and for that reason they tell us it's dangerous. They say there's no way for it to be purposeful. When others don't want us to have this freedom, we have to stop and ask why. We have to ultimately see that it's about control, and that their so-called protection is a lie. This is the ultimate freedom, the most significant one. All others are built on top of this, and without this, no other freedoms can be won. Freedom to transact. 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 to Transact by Ash Lightstone. Freedom to Transact by Ash Lightstone. Freedom to Transact. Freedoms 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 to transact. By Ash Lightstone. I hold you from the first in the session. Speak as I just shimmy without need. Use me for this. As much as me by Ash Lightstone. By Ash Lightstone. By Ash Lightstone. By Ash Lightstone. To transact.
So there you go. That is freedom. That's what's coming in the next free mint. It's not radio friendly, it's 8.5 or 9 minutes of audio, but boiled down to a 3 kilobyte file. You know, $5 to inscribe that as a master on Bitcoin. It's a technological work of art, and it's a piece of my mission to democratize block space for musicians on Bitcoin. You know, to open up this technology so that we can actually benefit the way that we've known it is coming at some point. Well, some of us have, you know, others are doubtful now, but once you strip away all of the hype, the tokens, the companies, the slogans, the logos, the brands, and you end up with a platform that anyone can use, anyone can do what they want to do with it. It works. It's on chain. Its functionality is on chain. You'll see what power this really gives musicians. And it's not just musicians, it's all the creators of everything to do with creating a song. All the plugins, the synthesizers, all of these things can be on-chain elements, all of them able to collect royalties just like any other element used in a song. But what's this free ROS about? So this is why you know, this is really exciting, because this is the first, I guess, third-party song that I've been asked to put together and get out there. I'm not going to play it, but there's some amazing music here that's coming, and this is what is kind of in the pipeline for Saturday, because now I'm not going to take any political leaning myself. I'm not endorsing or you know, either party or anything here, but I definitely endorse freedom of doing whatever you want with music, and this is a fine example of someone who has created something using Audionals recursive technology to write a song, which we're going to launch at 2:30 p.m. I believe on Saturday, as soon as former President Donald Trump leaves the stage. Free ROS will be launching, so stay tuned for anything more to do with that. But yeah, that's also very exciting. Also, one other thing worth mentioning before I move into today's subject was that I paid out royalties this week with Truth, which was you know, that was something just amazing to be able to do something where there is such a simple line of attribution. You know, the song can't hide from any of the parts that make it. It's something that I still struggle to really get across to people. But it's so organic, and yet it's so truthful. You know, there was a time when you know, I might record a piece for someone and then they say they changed it or they did this, that, and the other. But because of this high cost with Audionals and inscriptions, it's less likely that someone's going to redo some audio. They're not going to go and actually pay to reinscribe something. They're just going to mess with it. They're going to make it their own, and that's what people do in the real world. But in the real world, every layer of someone making a sound their own is a layer of obscurity from its original owner, and maybe from its original owner's you know, publishers or label, who are trying to keep track so they can get what's fairly theirs, but actually doing far too much work for far too little gain, all of which the artist pays for. So yeah, it's been amazing experience, you know, going through the motions of testing out that model and seeing how far it can go in terms of paying out royalties really efficiently. And in the end, I paid out $3,200 worth of royalties, and I paid $20 in fees. And like, if you were to talk to your average musician about how $3,200 might find its way to one person, let alone 20, is it's unheard of. It's just not practical in the real world. That just couldn't happen. Even if the music royalties framework was really efficient, $20 would still be unheard of. Whereas there it is, and that's not even as efficient as it can get. That's just me manually pushing things through in like the early days. But anyway, I want to move on from here because in the last couple of weeks been having lots of really interesting chats with lots of different people, and some guys who opened up a DM where they mentioned this word Modscription, which really caught my eye because it seems to slot in with my own sort of philosophy. If there was a word to represent how I kind of envisage all this code and everything that's going on here, I'm doing it with audio, but I'm also very conscious of doing it with code. We inscribed the Tone.js library on one of the OB1s. Had to restrict all the audio that could go onto that one in order to squeeze this amazing library on there. But so this movement towards greater efficiency and reuse of code, just the way I'm reusing audio and reuse of images as well. We can actually quite simply create a virtual projector, if you will, and then we've got thousands of slides lying all around the place in disarray, but you can start to piece these things together. And this is something that programmatically can continue to grow. It's not like one innovation is just this sort of singular thread of creation. It's actually part of a long ongoing trail. Everything we're doing here has the potential to, and in a lot of cases will be part of bigger and bigger systems moving forward that become more efficient and more capable. I've gone through this development period myself, so when I saw these guys chatting, I just thought, yeah, this is some guys that I'd really love to talk to. And so I invited them on the show to talk about Modscriptions, and they've got a lot of other stuff to talk about. They've been working on some really interesting stuff to do with kind of evolution, like people modifying a collection by sort of almost breeding their inscriptions together, in a very organic on-chain way. So that's Zed Zeroth and C12, who are the two experts that I'm going to have this fairly deep conversation with about that today. And then we've also got Stranger Solemn, who I have been chatting to for the last few weeks. He's an amazing glitch artist who's been moving up on the Bitcoin side of things. He's actually got quite a lot of experience on the other side of the bridge where I never got to on Ethereum, but he kind of cut his teeth there, but then very quickly and cleverly has been moving over to Bitcoin, and we've been having some really cool chats about the cutting edge. He's very interested in kind of what's the thing that no one can do right now that we can try to figure out to do, and that's obviously a way of thinking that I get along very well with. So I'm just going to cut into the Discord where we should hopefully be able to hear the guys. Give me one sec. Right, let's have a look in there. Can you guys...
Hey, I'm Zed.
Oh, hi guys.
Yeah, great
Hello.
to meet you.
Can you all hear me?
Hey. Yeah.
Sorry, I used to have like a green room set up, and it just got a little bit complicated, but I feel like I've just like just come barging in and going, "Hey, we're live!" But we are. I've just sort of finished out playing some music, and I've just introduced you all in the best way I could. Under our relationships have all been brief, but I'm really looking forward to having this chat. And I was just trying to explain to people how this really started out, talking about Modscriptions, just because I saw you guys talking about it, and I just liked the word. I saw the word and thought that just ticked so many boxes for me that I couldn't even explain. I couldn't verbalize, but I was like, yes. And then having since then had a DM and seen just how deep you guys have gone with this stuff is going to be super cool. And then Solomon, of course, who we've just also been having some really cool chats about how to really push the envelope, both in terms of sound and going further afield with like DMT. All this kind of stuff. So yeah, really interesting conversation. Looking forward to. So yeah, thanks for coming, you guys.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having us, Jim.
Cool, man. Well, I don't know if you want to maybe sort of introduce yourselves, or if there's anything specific that you wanted to kind of start things off with. I think it was you guys were just having a bit of a chat then. Was there something that was you were talking about just then?
Me and C12 were talking just about fairly random stuff related to our collections and how we've managed to get them working.
Yes, that old chestnut. Yeah. Yes, it's always a bit of a miracle sometimes, isn't it, when they actually come out of the box? It's really like Frankenstein's moment for me, really like birthing these crazy applications. I've had
the stress involved as well about when you send it to the blockchain and load it up afterwards and see if it works or not.
And now we've got these testing things like the Wizards inscribed their like Web3 testing environment, and then someone else sent me another one today or yesterday, which is kind of cool. Have you guys seen that? I think it's there's an address I can post it in here if you like, but there's you can basically, because when you take the domains out of everything, it makes it really difficult to test stuff, but actually using this, for people who don't know, it's really handy for testing that stuff. But yeah, I've had quite a few mistakes where I inscribed things with like just a space in the wrong place, or a bit of code that I had just been a little bit clumsy with, and then you have to go and do the whole thing again. At cost.
Yeah, I guess that's currently one of the nice things you can do with like SAT endpoint recursion is give yourself some more like security, in the sense that you can always like reinscribe things and have the collection kind of update.
Exactly.
Like in case you make a mistake or something, and that's really powerful. And also I think that it gives like more like artistic control, in the sense that like sometimes you get an additional idea only after inscribing it and like seeing it in practice, and being able to do that is quite awesome.
I'm really looking forward to going back to some of my first collections, because my whole development journey has really been on chain. I had some ideas about software applications prior to Audionals, but I'd never actually done it. I'd sort of asked for permission on some of the Stacks marketplaces to do it, but they didn't want to take the risk, and so I never really got into it. So it's all happened on chain. But so my first attempts, there was just so much breaking stuff, because I didn't even know the word for what I was trying to do. I was trying to do recursion, but I didn't know what it was called. I didn't really know what I was doing. Wasn't really part of the developer community, so I just had to keep making mistakes in order to learn, But now that you say that, I'm thinking, now I'm all about efficiency and doing stuff, but now there's something artistic about maybe going back to those broken attempts that I did and just make them work, because all I can do is just pull the entire broken code in programmatically on the fly, shuffle it up a bit, switch a few lines out, and now I've got another working version of the code with a minimal amount of new code needed. So yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, and I think we may have heard from Solemn's mic you talking about like I think it was you talking about like we're kind of like building like all of the things we're kind of currently doing might in the future like become their own new things, being like reshuffled, etc. Right? Is that what you were saying, or was it you, Solemn?
No, I don't think I was saying that. No, I just came in just before Jim entered.
Come on, I'm not sure someone admit it.
I'm not sure what we heard there.
Well, I heard it too. I don't think you were hallucinating. There was a conversation going on somewhere in the background.
Yeah, that was. I'm not sure what that was, but it was a super interesting point being made. So I'm just not sure who made that point.
Yeah, I've been thinking the same with a lot of these techniques and kind of ways of interacting with the ordinals are going to be used in all kinds of ways and made more efficient. And I think we're going to end up with collections with all of this all built in one go.
Yeah. And also there could also be like this kind of collaboration where I know somebody takes like, let's say, your flowers and combines them with like some of the musical things that Jim is doing, for example, and turns that into their own reshuffled collection that combines these features, but they already have like the assets pre-inscribed by, in this case, both of you. And I think that could be like almost like a new creative canvas where you don't build things from scratch, but you try to create like collages of existing works in interesting ways.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, that's one reason. Because I was talking to Greg about reducing costs, and he said, you can convert your JavaScript into kind of some kind of super condensed, minimalized form, but it's unreadable. So I've kind of deliberately left my code readable so that people can more easily use bits of it. I put it all as JavaScript classes, so they can easily be pulled into other projects.
I like this kind of like super open source culture here, and I think it's good to embrace that as much as possible.
100%. I mean, this is how we turbocharge, development and evolution of this tech, is by, pulling out as much friction as possible. In fact, this is somewhere I needed to learn, because I was so intent on just proving things could be done. I wasn't doing them in the best way, and I've just started getting some help from different people to start to, like you just said, use more classes to start to rewrite certain things so that it's really easy for someone to either, for example, use my synth or build their own synth and come in and inscribe it for $2 and now use their own synth with their own sounds in their song. And so, yeah, it's really important. And I'd like to see things like Scratch that my kids use, with your dragging blocks. I'd love to see that for adults on chain, something where someone's kind of packaging up functions and processes into these kind of visible blocks that you can then just drag and join together, and then just an application that does the little stuff in the background, actually tying these recursions together. But it'd be amazing, and it'll come. I'm sure that'll come soon, and then it'll start to get really efficient. No one has to go and just do their own code, because there's a way of piecing it together using, one or more existing inscriptions.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if that's what C12 was talking about earlier. But you're talking about making things easier for builders, but I think there's the other side, which is, for example, me and C12 have these collections where the users can interact, but it's actually really hard for them to interact in a lot of cases, because they have to interact on chain, so they have to make inscriptions somehow. So I've been letting people use Sapting, I think C12's for the postage changes saying the Unisat wallet is best. But
yeah, can you go into this? Go because this is an interesting thing that you sent me something earlier, and I was saying how I haven't got the Unisat. But yeah, so what can you just break it down for me? What is going on there that is able to happen in this kind of? It sounds like a sort of hybrid environment where it's not on chain, but it's not off chain.
Yeah, I guess it's fully on chain in this case. It's just that, I for this collection specifically, I tried to make it as simple as possible for the users within the constraints. So like the only way you interact with the inscription is by changing its padding. So like every inscription has a padding. Most of the time it's like 546 sats as default. And then, so the code of the inscription checks that padding, and based on the padding value, adjusts the look of the inscription. So each inscription is made out of like 4 layers: the background, the main body of the character, the kind of head, and the eye. And then changing the padding value will swap those layers to different ones. So you can, by simply changing the padding to, let's say, from 546 to like 1000, it will create like a new look, and then you can do that a few times to find the look that you like the most, and use that as your PFP. So this essentially allows like each owner of each inscription to kind of curate that inscription to like, get the exact look they want. But yeah,
send me any links if you want me to show anything on screen to help visualize any of this as you're going. But yeah, it's interesting because I know the OB1s were all inscribed with, it was all about block 78, so they were all inscribed with 7887, like a palindrome, I think was what they were talking about. But so 7887 is the padding on each of them. But yeah, it's interesting. I hadn't thought about that being another data point. Of course, everything's a data point. But yeah, it's funny how.
Yeah, I think that, like C12 said, the kind of genius with that idea was the simplicity. It was the one number that everyone should easily be able to change. The problem is we don't have the interfaces yet to make this really easy for the user. So they have to use Unisat currently, or at least some kind of other platform, and they have to make sure that they've done it right, or they might make a mistake. Whereas I'm hoping that within the year we'll have just the website. You connect your wallet, and you would just tell it. It might be specific to the collection. So in C12's case, it might be you actually. Now, C12 is slightly different because he kind of wants it that you play around with random paddings and then see how it ends up. But if we switch that the other way, the platform might have a whole load of different images. You choose the one you like, and then it modifies the padding to match that, so that you then on-chain have that version. And I think that's the piece of the puzzle that's missing from a lot of the things people like me and C12 are doing is we've made ordinals that people can change and interact with, but it's quite hard for them to do that currently.
Yeah, I'm just showing your children up here on screen. Do you want to talk us through what's going on there, what we're looking at?
Well, this was just like we said about keeping things open. A big part of what I do, I try and think like what's the most Bitcoin-centric way to do this. So instead of me inscribing all my JavaScript in random places, I've made them all children of one sat. So
nice.
Again, so I don't have to make a website to show you my files. I can just click on it's all on an ordinal browser now. So these are all just the different classes. So the first few are what my Ordinaire collection use, and then it moves on to the bonsai, and then at the bottom are the new ones for the flowers, and some random other stuff in there as well. I mean, some good examples in here would be there's a calendar class which there's a clock class which pulls. In fact, this comes back to my Bitcoin centric idea. There are some early collections where the JavaScript read the time of day on your computer, and changed it to be day or night on the ordinal. But to me, that's not Bitcoin centric. That's that means if you load your ordinal in its daytime where you are, it looks different from my one. So I've made a blockchain clock which basically figures out. It just keeps track of what block we're currently on. And then I've made a calendar class which reads from that, and that's how the bonsai seasons change from like spring to summer and winter as different blocks are mined.
Nice. Sorry, I was muted before. I meant to. I was actually answering you, but
I kept talking.
Yeah, that's super interesting, and actually what you were saying about the padding as well, it's striking now that I think about it, because that's one of those pieces of data that everybody sees. Like when the minimal sort of stuff that you might see on mempool, it's always got that padding there, so it seems obvious now that you mention it.
That in a way that sums up what I'm doing most days when I'm trying to plan a new collection. I imagine C12 is the same. There's very minimal amounts of data that the ordinals can access, so that's what constrains everything that we're doing. So we're kind of trying to find creative ways of making the most out of the information they can read.
Yes, it was something that one of the lessons I learned early on, because I thought it would be really cool to have, because I was a trader for a few years, and I have I got all these screens that had all my various charts and things on. And something that I really wanted was to know when blocks were mined, but I didn't want to be keeping an eye on the blocks, and so I thought I'd just make this ordinal that would just change color. It's just like a background, basically just a color. But I didn't know what I was doing, and I linked it out to, I can't remember what I looked up, but I went to a website effectively to say, tell me the block number. It works on Hero, weirdly. But it definitely broke all the rules of Web3 at that point. But I'd like to go back and re-get that going, because actually I use it still. It's like a broken ordinal, but it was my first real attempt at an ordinals with utility, because I was like, this is where we've got to take this now. It's not just about what we can do with it. It's like what can we do with this that then does something for us. And yeah, like you said, like making it so that it works entirely in an on-chain environment. Its operation is never going to change. The experience is always the same. I mean, I like the artistry of checking your clock, but it's also just such a loose thing, because you can just change your clock to change how the ordinal looks anyway. So it's not like it's locked in any way, is it? Whereas if it's on-chain, you're really locking it.
Yeah, I just like the idea that it's night time for everyone on the blockchain, or it's like spring for everyone. It's all linked. They're all reading from the same information effectively.
And so, so tell us about the process of two different users combining their traits, like for example, like with the flowers, perhaps. How does that, what's the user experience like? If you could sort of imagine, if I've got a flower, I've seen another flower that I like on the marketplace, how do I go about producing a new flower with someone else's flower?
So effectively I made a Bitcoin bonsai a while ago, and they're really cool, but they're very complicated. And I learned from that so my objective with the flowers was to make the user experience as simple as I could. So effectively on Magic Eden, you can click transfer, and you can select multiple. You can basically send multiple inscriptions at once, which is actually quite hard to do on a lot of the other wallets and platforms. But because most people will be buying via Magic Eden, then it should be fine. So effectively, you just choose any flowers you have in your wallet. So you might see one you've liked and you bought it, and you just send them to yourself, and they will breed together. You could, but if you buy more than one flower in one go, then I think Magic Eden sends them to you in a single transaction as well. So they would actually breed together just by buying more than one at the same time. So it's really simple, which was my objective from the beginning, really, with this.
Nice. And so how then, because I know we haven't got onto the music side of things yet, but I know when you guys said you'd been talking about music creation, like on-chain music creation, and that was how we ended up getting in touch. So what were you what was driving your audio ambitions on chain when you started talking about it?
Have you got any comments, C12, on this one?
So I mean, on the kind of music side, the way I got interested is like music was kind of my background before Audionals. And like this kind of idea of open source music and this kind of constant evolution of music and constant remixing of everything, that like everything is both a piece of music but also a sample to be resampled into something new. That always like interested me, but I like never really saw like an actual way to do that in practice. And then like when I saw what you're doing with Audionals, that like was massive for me. Like that's pretty much the ideal solution for this, and it works so beautifully on Bitcoin.
Do you remember Steve Reich?
No, sorry, I don't.
Like I think when I was a kid, I had this friend of my parents who was a bit of a hippie, and he was the first person he saw me playing with my tape deck.
Okay.
Like I'm like a kid of the 70s, I was born in the 70s, and this is probably the mid 80s, and I'm playing with like my tape deck, and he'd seen that I was into recording and that I was doing weird stuff. Like I was recording stuff, and I'd figured out how to like get a knife, like a bread knife, and stick it through the one side of the cassette so that I could put pressure on the tape that was playing onto the other one to create like sound effects kind of thing. I was just out there, and he spots this and he goes, here's a kid who might understand this concept of everything being musical. And then he showed me this stuff of Steve Reich, which is kind of repetition. And that was probably what got me thinking about adding the reverse function into the player, into the sequencer and the on-chain player as quickly as possible, because it's incredible how quickly you can just create just a note. Just by taking what I've just said in the last 10 seconds, I've probably covered maybe 2 octaves. And if you pick any section in there, like 1/10 of a second or half a second, whatever it may be, and then you reverse it against itself and then loop it infinitely, it becomes like a modulated wave. And then you can then slide your selection up and down, and it's just like the audio we've already got is so plentiful when you start looking at it that way. I said to people the other day, think of it like Stomp, who is like a company that came from Brighton where I live, a company called Stomp, who got really, really famous in like the 90s and the early 2000s for bashing bin lids. They just picked up stuff and they hit it, they tapped the floor, they played with broomsticks. They made like hundreds of millions of dollars. They had like 30 touring companies at one point. But it was just that idea of just making music from anything. And that's what we can do now. That's this pioneering spirit we need to come and use this system, to kind of start modeling stuff. Because once that happens, then people can just remix that. Once it's done, it's done. And now someone can come and grab that. They don't have to grab it and redo it. They can just programmatically recreate exactly what you've done and pull it into their song. And then we can start to see like an actual evolution that'll eventually turn into like really, high resolution. Eventually people will start to inscribe the plugins that people use for mastering. And we'll be able to see an entire process from concept to composition to mixing to mastering to distribution, all happening entirely on chain, and maintaining everyone's attribution throughout.
And I feel like the beauty of Ordinals is that it's actually like very difficult to hide like the components that you used to make the piece, or
It's
to make them
impossible, really.
impossible.
It's
Exactly,
impossible.
right?
If
Like you'd have to.
If
Yeah.
something on chain can decipher it, then something off chain can decipher it. There's just no level of
Exactly.
of crypto, that you can use in this space to hide anything, with any certainty. It's just not possible. And this is the beauty of it. And so it's like someone can take. I often use the reference because I see this going far off into the future. We inscribed with the OB1s. They've got a beautiful 808 kick drum with like a second of like ringing out at the end. It's beautiful sound. But I'm like, in 10 years, someone might have pitched that up, then someone else might have modulated it until it sounds like a duck. I mean, whatever. It doesn't even matter. But it's like it can, and then from a duck, someone then evolves it until it sounds like a trumpet, and it can go anywhere it wants to go. But that attribution remains because it's a programmatic process that happens in that first tenth of a second before the song plays. Is it calls that original kick drum from 100 years ago, and it goes, oh, I've got to put you through all these different things to get to this point. And so it's just kind of designed for exactly this, for like rescuing an industry that needs help badly, that needs help in making it fertile again. The music industry is just going to dry up if it's just seen as being something that you just got to be special for. It's this is what we really need, is like full democratization of music, via the blockchain.
And I feel like even already at this stage, like it feels just so fresh and so fun to use something like Audionals. Like I remember when we some time ago like exchanged a piece between each other, like how quickly you can just exchange a whole project with this is just incredible. Like you don't need to like ask what plugins are you using or what DAW or whatever. You just send someone like a JSON file or whatever,
it's
and
like 100 kilobyte
they have the entire
file. And it's
exactly
instant compatibility.
It's crazy, right?
Perpetual compatibility, and that'll work forever. If we how many times this happens to me all the time, things that I've been working on my hard drive with someone, and then we've gone back and we're like, oh, that plugin doesn't exist. That like something doesn't work anymore. This, something sounds different. It's different. Whereas anything we do here, and now that we've got the cost down, I can save a file for $5. If I'm collaborating with several people, it's like it's not a massive price to pay for us even to be like saving progress as we're going. But algorithmically growing this thing, I think there's so many things I haven't even got to think of yet that we can even make this even more efficient and allow people to kind of have through what you're doing, but these updates, updates that kind of have an impact on what's going out without having to re-inscribe the song because you've got a better version of it. All of that kind of stuff. But
I agree, and also kind of to tie this back into Modscriptions, I think kind of what we discussed now would be like the kind of evolution of music through like reshuffling by various people, but then you could also have this as well within the inscription itself, where we could start treating music not less as like files, but more as individual apps, where every song is like an app, where you use like Modscription properties so that every user can like modify their piece, right? So like I can have a song which has these elements, and then, for example, I change the padding, and that swaps out the kick drum for a different kick drum, etc. Like depending on how I feel today, I can modify the piece with like some elements provided by the artist and change its components and stuff like that.
That's interesting, man. So can you just again, just so I can be clear, because I'm sometimes a bit foggy when seemingly important things are said to me like this. But so by sending the transaction to Mint, for example, but by changing the padding, which is something that the thing that's about to be inscribed is able to be aware of as the inscription kind of happens. Am I kind of on the right track here?
Yeah, exactly,
Okay.
right? Like, so you can use whatever aspect you want. Like, for example, the things that Zed is doing with flowers, or what I'm doing with the Guardians, all those things can be applied to music. And then instead of the piece being kind of like set in stone, pre-recorded, or pre-programmed piece, it's all of the components can be dependent on those variables, like the padding or the location or whatever.
So the off-chain. So because with what I've done, as you said, there is a big off-chain element to what I'm doing, which you can just share. There's no cost. You're utilizing these things. You're building something. You're building the potential, but there's no cost in doing this. And so what you're saying, it sounds like it's like taking the DMT idea, which is nice in its randomness and guaranteed fairness, but saying how can we take that and just have a controlled version. So I'm assuming there would possibly be a way where I could say, okay, there's 1,000 different ways to hear this song, and I've attached each of those ways to a padding from 546 up to 1546, just for example. And then I could probably have an emulator, again, an off-chain thing, but where you can go and test your seeds to hear it and then inscribe it when you've sort of discovered the right mix, because it's an ordered thing. You've got the control to go, all I've got to do is find this. I mean, the padding, obviously, it gets a bit out of hand if you start going into like really big seeds, but at least just for 1,000, that would work, right? That's kind of what,
yeah. And you can do it like in a way where you pick a single seed and then it's set in stone, but then you can also tie it to something that's user modifiable. So like the piece can be inscribed, and then whoever owns the inscription can keep changing how it sounds after the fact by just changing, for example, the padding, which is always accessible and can be always changed. By the own inscription.
That's the other thing, Jim, you perhaps misunderstood slightly, in that the idea is it's not off-chain, and you don't have to make new inscriptions. You just make a transaction with a different amount of sats in it, and it will change the inscription you own.
Yeah.
Yes,
so
I've got that now. So that's
the size of the UTXO. Yeah, so it's just the size of the UTXO, like different sizes.
That's another thing that you can use.
Things.
Yeah, all of these things that you can use. So it's like
like
a DMT, but you've got control. You can say, I want this to be number 767. I'm not waiting for some random element to come out of a hash or something. It's like, this is a known figure. Because I was thinking about this the other day, thinking it'd be interesting when you mentioned time. I was thinking about like block day and block night, having something like in a game which was to do with like how many blocks were processed in a 12-hour period. But
absolutely.
I suddenly came back to going, no, I'm trying to put a clock in there again. I was like, I really like doing that, but how a blockchain does it doesn't know what the day is. So I don't know how to tell it a day has happened. Now, how many transactions happen in that day when a day doesn't mean anything in here? I found myself...
but you could tie the piece to specific Bitcoin events. Like, for example, every halving, the piece changes, on the halving block and sounds like, very like a celebration or whatever, all those kinds of things should be possible.
And timed with the difficulty adjustments this 2 weeks, which to me was like a nice compromise, not too often and not too slow.
That's really awesome what Zed is doing with the rare sets.
And there's even things you can do, because thinking back to my, one of my first experiments, the thing I was saying about earlier, this canvas that changes color when the block changes. So all I did was I set this up and I said, what's the current block height? And I said, okay, this is the constant is like, you're just going to reference against this. It's not the best way of doing it. But again, I was trying to figure out how to code. I was just kind of figuring out how to do these things. And so it was like, okay, here's the constant, which is the current block height. And then every time the block changes, it's just going to see how far away am I from that, divide that by, I think I've got 11 colors. And so then it just displays one of those colors. And so every time the block changes, it shows a different color. But I could, at the time I was thinking, I could do something interesting where if I make it, okay, if it's divisible by 2, it does this. If it's divisible by 3, it does this. Almost going down the prime number route of having like, okay, it's just based on the block height. It's just going to constantly do this. It'd be totally predictable. But I was Yeah, it's interesting that this has really turned into something that is
Yeah.
really interesting. But these things are important. These things that a user can take control of in order to influence how something evolves is definitely not only really cool and innovative, but I think soon to be seen really useful and will have real world utility. But I think
Yeah.
we've already sort of got to an hour, and I haven't even spoken to Solom properly, because Solom, we've been chatting for a couple of weeks, and yeah, just wanted to bring you in on the conversation as well, because we were talking about sort of DMT like things. I know you had some ideas, and you were also talking about audio and different
Yeah,
ways
yeah,
of. So yeah,
yeah,
what are your
yeah.
thoughts?
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, Jim. Yeah, it was a very interesting conversation. This stuff about the padding and that, it's all brand new to me, but it sounds really interesting and something that, yeah, maybe when we were talking about DMT, the stuff we were talking about, maybe this would be a better idea to use. Yeah, so I'll tell you a bit about myself. I'm traditionally an artist. I'm been full time in Web3 for like 2 years. When I found Audionals, well, I'm a traditional glitch artist, and glitch art is pretty big file sizes and that. So when I found Audionals, I started messing about with recursion and P5 and making glitch art using P5 kind of thing. That's when I learned about recursion, and then my background's in music as well. Before making visual art, I was into producing and beat making and that kind of stuff, DJing and that kind of stuff. So when I found Jim's tools, um, just got to work. I've been playing around with since I found them. I've been playing around with them every day. I've just actually inscribed a couple of audio files myself. A 909 kick, 909 clap.
Awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I want to hear.
And the stuff you were saying about remixing stuff, yeah. So I'm making all my music. I'm just going on Gen data, and then just going through all the audio files and finding little things to use. So pretty much all my tracks are remixes of other stuff. I've
Can't
used
wait,
the
man. I hope you're just going to suddenly just land an album on my lap and go, I'm ready to go.
yeah. So I'm interested in like just making, because I make glitch art. I'm interested in like adding music to my art basically.
Yes, well, I think this algorithmic idea as well is going to be very, very relevant to, being able to like, create collections of uniqueness.
Yeah. So what another thing that I'm building, I've already been inscribing it for quite a while, is some animated parrots, like party parrots. I've actually, it's not a new project. It started on ETH in like 2022. I made a couple of parrots, and then it's been on Tezos. I dropped 50 parrots on Tezos, and then when early on in Ordinals, February 2022, February 2023. Which was about inscription number 1,300, no, 130,000, sorry. That was my first inscription, and it was 15 parrots, called the Ordinal Party. I don't know if you want to get it out and get it up on your screen at all.
Yeah, can you post a link in the down below?
Yeah. One sec, yeah. Yeah, if you see them, you'll understand more what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's good to show them while we're talking about them. I lost my first inscription.
I'll find them on Magic Eden now.
Yeah, I managed to lose my first inscription. I was quite upset about that. My first two inscriptions, in fact. One of them was a piece of code that just made a lamp turn on and off. It was like just two inscriptions of a lamp with it off and then it on, and then just when you clicked it, the lamp would turn on, and it was about 50,000. And I had it in my original wallet. It was before I think I got a Sparrow wallet at that point, but I think the very first two I did went straight into my original legacy wallet, and then they just got sent out with some change at some point, which was a shame. Maybe we'll be reunited one day.
Hey, so did you get a link that I just sent into the chat?
There we go.
Yeah. So basically, this is my earliest collection on Audionals, and I've been expanding more traits to bring out a second like season of the collection, but there was always something missing. So I've actually added most of it ready for a couple of months, and then when your music's come along, I think that could add the missing piece
It's
of the
so
puzzle.
rhythmic. Yeah, it's
You know
perfect.
what I mean? So it could get the parrots moving to the kick drum. My idea is maybe like, say if I was doing let's just say there was a collection of 1,000, I could get like 20 different drum loops.
Oh man,
and then
it's super cool. It's kind of like, so do you know the Obi-Wans? So the Obi-Wans, obviously, their main focus was like high resolution audio. So it's like, let's get a kick drum that's going to be like 350 kilobytes and inscribe it. It's, you know, that's kind of, I guess, the blue chip sort of library stuff. But what I'm looking at here, like looking at this, is kind of built for like being a library, but also it's an animated library where it's like the loops are kind of playing themselves, but then it's an easy thing to sort of jump in and grab a kick or grab a snare or even grab a loop or whatever. But it's just like an animated library would be amazing.
Is that what you can envision with it? I never actually thought of that. I was thinking of adding like each parrot its own little mini soundtrack, like maybe.
Because I mean, it can do, because you said you've already started inscribing stuff, so you've already there's a library there, but it's like these guys kind of play the library, but then you listen to it and you find the one you like, and then all you do is you grab that ordinal, pull it into the sequencer, and now, because of the nature of what we're doing here, even though you might have a beat with lots going on, it's still an Audional style thing, so it's still a kick and a snare and a hat that has been sequenced up. So once that's pulled into the sequencer, it can still be stripped back to its sound. So even if it's like the loop they want, or they're just after your 909 kick, you know, all they got to do is grab that ordinal ID, and then one way or another, they're either, you know, buffering it as audio and then just trimming out the kick. But like I said, because of the organic nature of this stuff, it's just there. It's kind of leading back ultimately to that kick, and then what they would be doing is going, either I just want to use the kick, or actually if I'm using this ordinal, it's because I like this beat and I want to build on it, or I want to like move the snare, you know, a little bit one direction, or, you know, give it a bit of a swing or whatever. But yeah, they're so rhythmic. It kind of definitely seems like it's made for music.
It's Audionals and the parrots are a match made in heaven. It's just how to add beats. So the thing that you're talking about there is not what I was envisioning. Just say getting 10 different drum patterns, like techno pattern, house pattern, something like that, EDM, and then somehow we was talking about using DMT to just generate some bass lines.
Yeah, this is what I was saying when those guys were just talking about the seed, you know, that the padding. That then made me think, that would be a really predictable way to do it. Like you could come up with, you could go through millions of different seeds and sort of audition them, and then come up with your favorite 1,000, for example, and then link each of those to a specific level of padding, and then have a predictable way that people could even select, you know, the beats.
Oh, you mean like at the inscribing point?
Yeah, like at the inscribing point, then it's kind of that's what then generates that seed, which then says, okay, I am now playing this kick at this pattern, this snare at this pattern, you know. As there's once you've just got to a few instruments, the numbers get really big or very quickly. I think when I went over my 16 channel sequence, so if I've been working on a kind of canon type arrangement, so I've got 5 different songs that are all at the same tempo in the same key, but all written to try to be as different as possible within reason, within the same tempo and the same key. And then, but just those 5, when I algorithmically just say, okay, grab, you know, any one of 16, and I mean this is using all 16. It's not saying just the 5 kicks, just the 5 snares. That does get a really big number, but by just allowing all 16 to be mixed randomly like that, it gets over 1 million unique copies, and that's just from 5 similar songs, you know. So it's pretty massive what you can kind of get algorithmically doing this stuff. So it'll be super interesting to see it applied to a collection, and even to go through that process of working out how to kind of filter the noise, you know, how to make it work without working too well, but also without being just a catastrophe of just like chaos of, you know, whatever. It's like there's going to be like a balance to be struck to kind of but I'm really interested to go through that process.
This sounds a lot like my the flower breeding generation. The algorithms is kind of similar in that when you breed too many together, I had to kind of throttle things so that it didn't get too crazy. It was actually crashing my browsers at some points because it brought two complex flowers. It's kind of the visual version of what you're talking about.
Yes, I was imagining that it certainly can get, like when you get to those big numbers. I have tried to put together, you know, in the very early days of Stacks, we put together a collection called Crash Punks, and there was 10,000 of those. And yeah, you know, we had kind of on the fly come up with an algorithm for piecing them together. There were hundreds of different pieces, lots of different like rules of things that could and couldn't go together that kept growing every day. You know, the ask would be like, oh, you know, that can't go with that. And then some things is just a stylistic things. Other things was because the artwork physically couldn't interact, and it got so complex. And in the end, we pretty much went through the entire 10,000 collection by hand because we were just worried about there being errors or like things that didn't work. Whereas with this, it's a much more experimental, but yeah, it can become like epic if you're wanting to actually quality control can get very
well, I mean, for me, that's the perfect use case for Modscription, because what you then do is you let the users control the combinations. So if they make something that sounds bad, they just rewrite it with something else.
Yeah, this is the game theory element of it, really, isn't it? It's kind of like the users. If you allow them to create the collection, I mean, this is something I've built into the.
Great idea.
What's that?
I was just saying that's a great idea, yeah. Like the users.
Because
like
you then get this really organic, you know, you get to see, you know, it's like when people always say, let the market decide, you know, it's like you get to see, you know, what they really wanted. It might be completely not what you thought. As an artist, you might come out and go, this is this thing, but also because of what we're in this thing, where part of what we're doing is the technology. There's some values to some of these things that come out that are not tangible, they're not visible, and so that in itself is quite mind-numbing. I'm sure like you guys will just find it amazing what I've just been through with the flowers over the last week. Everyone who's created these new combinations have created flowers that I've never seen before. Amazing.
Yeah.
And it's just a really cool experience. I mean, I can't imagine what it'd be like for you guys with it on from like a musical perspective. I thought it might be worth talking about because you were talking about like, the complexity and how C12's padding idea. You know, you were limited by the number of numbers. So what was really clever about C12's idea is that postage is really easy to control and it's a very simple number. But at the other extreme, you've got the parent-child provenance and reinscription, which allows much more complex control over your own ordinals. So for example, what I could do is tell you what a musical version of my Bitcoin bonsai would look like. So currently, you buy a bonsai canvas. Sorry, I'm running low on sleep at the moment. Probably talking at half my usual speed.
That's all good.
You buy a bonsai canvas and you inscribe coloured emojis, and it will grow a tree on the canvas. So, for example, you could have a collection of 1,000 pieces with, let's say, 10 different instruments. So you go on the marketplace and there's 100 pianos, like squares for sale with some art on there or something. But the main thing is that you're buying an instrument, so you buy a piano. What you can then do is, for this, probably reinscription would be best rather than using children, because music is a single instrument is linear, right? It plays one thing at a time. Well, okay, that's not quite true. You can play multiple notes at a time. But anyway, bear with me. Someone could then inscribe just A, B, A, B, A, B, C, D onto the piano, and then when they load up the piano inscription, it will actually play those notes. So that would be reinscription, like user modification to create their own note. That then, when anyone in the world viewed that inscription, they would hear the tune that person had inscribed, but the only person with control over the tune would be the owner. They could then reinscribe different patterns to change the music. But you can take this much further. So, for example, you could combine that with my flower breeding, but just make it so if you then send a piano with a tune built into it in the same transaction as a drum with a tune built into it, now when you load up one of those ordinals, you hear both of those playing together. So you could create an entire piece of music on one ordinal effectively, all under the control of the owners. They could create really awesome tracks and then put them on marketplaces. This is like the other side to it. It's not just about modifying it for your own benefit. You can, for example, with my bonsai, someone could grow a really cool tree, some people already have, and then they can sell them on. So like there's kind of a market side to it as well. You're giving the user control to create things and then resell them.
Yes, well, this is what I've been trying to achieve with the sequencer all along, is doing exactly that, is saying just reshape these elements, but the thing that's really been important to me, and is what I've done over the last few days, is handing out royalties. That's meant a lot to me as someone who's trying to find the true solution to all of this, is people getting paid, and getting paid in an efficient way. And so I put out a song. It minted out super quickly. It was a pretty crazy experience seeing the thing mint out in about an hour, and then a huge amount of trading on secondary markets. But of course, that was my mechanical income, is probably what you would refer to it in the normal world when you like actual sales, physical sales. But I was able to then, Gamma don't do the royalties. It's still sort of on me, but this is, testing out this system for automating it in the future. But so I received all of my income. I had said I'm going to do this sort of 80-20 split. So whatever I receive, 20% of that is going to go, and I'm going to forward that on to all of the sample holders. And again, I'm just splitting it evenly between the sample holders, but those sample holders, there could also be synths that I've used, or reverbs, or even gates and compressors, EQs. I've got people building different things, haven't got things actually into the modules yet, but when they come, it's just another ordinal address that's pulled in. That's now another party that can share in this 20% of royalties. And just how efficient that is. How I sent out $3,200 roughly worth of royalties, and it cost me in total $20, and that was just not skimping on the fees just to get them out there. But it was just so efficient, because again, that amount of money being passed anywhere in the actual real world from the person who's paying the bill through to the musician, it's like they're not even going to get half of it. Even that is probably optimistic, that they might get half of the money that's sort of sent their way, because it's just so inefficient. So I did that, and that again now just puts that value in things like these libraries. You can be having these audio inscriptions, and people are just going to keep reusing them. There's no reason anyone needs to do it again, which means that while we can't police actual royalties like for playing, we can oversee the process of minting. And even though I'm just trying to set an example, I know that marketplaces like Gamma would follow my lead on this. They've always got that balance that you have to strike between providing an outlet for the artist and lots of material for the users. They totally understand that if you just look after one side of the equation, you run out of either artists or users, depending on what you're doing. And so they'll support with this. And all we've got to really do, I know you mentioned about royalties and wanting to hear my thoughts on it, and it was really just about my vision, because I still haven't worked this out. You guys might be able to help me with this. I have mentioned this a few times over the last few days. I've built an application that vaguely works, but again, I'm dealing with things I don't fully understand. I'm trying to figure out how I would get from from an ordinal address. So someone owns an ordinal. I don't have a node. I do have a Bitcoin node running, but I haven't managed to get Ord running. I know that might be part of the solution, but how do I get from an ordinal ID? I get to the ordinal wallet. How do I now get to a payment wallet that's within that same seed that I know exists in order to pay these royalties? So, for example, the last song, there's one sound in there. It's a person I don't know. I mostly used OB1s, and because I've been helping those guys, stitching my technology into, Audionals 2.0, going into those artworks to make those songs that you can play in tabs. You can sort of do a live mix just across tabs with those. They are perfectly in sync without being linked. But because I'd mostly used those, I knew who I was dealing with, and so I have a list of owners that I can access, and they've given me payment addresses. Whereas this one sample, I don't know who it is, so I don't know how to securely send a payment of. I've got $200 worth of royalties for them roughly, but I don't know how to get it guaranteed to that right person.
Yeah, I think that's a problem mostly with the specific way that Xverse is doing things, because Xverse does the separation between the payment address and the ordinals address. But if you look at Unisat, it's all the same thing, and it just the wallet knows how to kind of smartly differentiate between the ordinals and the BTC within the same address.
But how do I come from the other direction? Like, if all I have is an ordinal ID, how do I find your payment?
Yeah, it's not the short answer. I think
that's not possible. I think that's unfortunately not possible.
The ordinal address and the payment address are both derived from the seed, so you can't go backwards. Otherwise, you can just hack everyone's wallets.
Because the closest I've got was I've built an app that uses Blockstream's API. It just goes into the ordinal wallet, and then again, this is like a very haphazard way of doing it, but I did manage to get my address out of it, because all it did was the program basically read through all transactions and then weighed up which address most likely was like the primary address based on looking at the transactions and seeing which transactions had created and received change. I can't remember exactly what the logic was.
Yeah, you're right. But if they were using, for example, Xverse or something, you probably could determine if they've made enough transactions. The other potential way around it is you can send Bitcoin to they're not actually different. You can send Bitcoin to an ordinals address. It just depends on the know-how of the person on the other end and what.
So this is what we really need. This is what I need is for the tech to be more robust around that, so that the wallets themselves won't do something weird. I guess it's more about people accidentally spending an ordinal than Bitcoin. If they see there's Bitcoin in there, I'm assuming some wallets will now already be able to deal with that.
Yeah, I think that's already the case. I think you can safely send. I'm pretty sure you can safely send the BTC to the ordinal.
I'm blaming you guys if this goes wrong.
Yeah, and I think Xverse will detect it and will not.
Because I have that. Obviously, I have the address of the, because it's from the single truth, and it's the word truth. There's a sample I found. It sounds like it's maybe for a game. There's quite a lot of them. It's like one of those things where there's a batch of about 20 or 30 sounds of this same vocal, deep voice, sounds a bit spooky, and he says the cold hard truth, and I just took truth out of it. But obviously he gets a royalty. I don't know who he is. That's all good. But yeah, I was up against that, thinking I don't want to send it, knowing it might not get there. This has to be a kind of all-in-one solution. And the only other thing I could think of was maybe using runes or something to say, okay, if I minted my own runes and then I say, okay, for every Satoshi, I just send you the same runes, and then they are exchangeable back here. But hopefully what you've just said now is maybe there is just a simpler solution really coming along.
If this is a one-off case, the easiest solution, which I've used before, is like inscription mail. You just inscribe a message and send it to his ordinals.
I just think again that's just that also just involves actual communication, which is not the ultimate solution, but could work for now. But I think maybe just, I mean, it's not a huge amount of money. I think I'm happy to just suck it and see. I think I'll send it and see what happens.
And another potential thing that like will 100% ensure that nothing wrong will happen is sending an inscription to that address, but putting all the money you want to send into the padding of that inscription. And then that will ensure that the money will be safe, and that person will just have to extract the sats from the inscription.
Okay, this is again something else that's been right under our eyes, and I haven't really considered that properly. So because padding can be spent, right? Like, so once you have a wallet, it just always seemed to me like one of those things that was just a bit out of my reach. But I guess now you can actually just go in and say, I don't need all that padding. I'm going to take those satoshis.
Yeah,
that's interesting. Wow.
Okay.
So you could just pad it with the payment.
Message in the description saying,
we've got to try this.
If you download Unisat, you can pull out the padding or something like that.
Yeah. You can do that with padding. You can do that with Unisat.
And so it's theirs even if they don't even notice it. It's in their Audionals wallet. I've given it to them if they figure it out.
And they cannot accidentally spend it or anything because the inscription
can be the message. It could effectively be like a receipt. Just like a little receipt, but then the padding is the payment. That's awesome. Okay.
Yeah, you can even include some message on the inscription. Like
that's what I mean. The inscription could just be a simple. I've already created something that will create text for the album covers. I've got something that you just input the text you want, and then that's all you really have to inscribe is the actual words, and then the code is there. So I could just send a message using that same tech that just creates a little album cover for them that just says, hey, you have a payment from such and such a song, and it's actually attached to this ordinal. And then I guess they can then take away that padding. They don't destroy the ordinal. It still remains a piece of art in a way, or a message, but they can just take that padding and turn it into spendable Bitcoin.
You could even potentially automate that process. So like you kind of just have a little program where you enter in all the music you've used, or it reads your own inscription somehow, and then it automatically like packages up all the royalties and sends it to the originator addresses. And something like that could be possible.
Yeah. This is music to my ears.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, this all makes me think if all of this could be somehow ported onto Lightning, where all of this, because like on Lightning and anything is possible, so this could potentially be all automated, and you could potentially even have like actual royalties that could be based on like micro tipping. So for example, anybody who listens to the piece can like tip the creator, and the tip gets automatically split into all the sample owners, etc.
This is just like triggered another thought of something that I encountered about probably 2 years ago. Yeah, it must have been 2021, maybe even 3 years ago. We were just launching the Stacks mainnet. It was the first real test of proof of transfer, mining with Bitcoin effectively. And I was introduced to this site called Sparkshot, which I just saw it and I thought, okay, this is magic, but they're underselling it. And all it was your screen became just a grid. Say it was 1,000 by 800 or whatever, a grid of coloured squares. And if I clicked on one, it highlighted it, and I could click on any number of them, and then a little bill would pop up in the bottom saying, pay this bill and you'll reveal what's behind these squares. And they were using it as a kind of NFT art reveal. So you would kind of create a map and be like, these are the valuable bits, which was kind of cool. But again, I'm looking at this going, like, this is like an enormous utility in what you're doing here. Like if you just forget the art and just go, those are switches, and I can do anything I could do with switches, I can do here, and then I can pay a bill, and then I can execute something that was based on what I did with those switches. And I get in touch with these guys. I did a couple of competitions on my Discord at the time, like using their thing as it was meant to be used as a reveal. I created a piece of art. I hid some little things in it, and then I said to my community, "Go and do this. This is super cool. This is the future. This is like lightning, micropayments. It's instant. You go and you reveal stuff. Anyone who reveals these little things I've hidden in these pictures, you'll win these NFTs we're making." And it ended up being rinsed by like 2 guys out of we had 1,000 people in the community. Nobody was ready for Lightning. This is like 3 years ago. Lightning was finance. It was just money. And so the SparkShot guys somehow get in touch with me, and they're like, "Hey, we've been looking to find out where this traffic came from. All these people using our site for a few days, like all 2 of them coming back, several times a day and rinsing it to win these prizes." But they were like, no one uses this site. Nothing, like we've had nothing. And it's like, yeah, because, and they said they started working on it in 2017. It's like, how far ahead of your time do you want to be? And I really tried to get some people at that time to kind of get behind them. I think they were hanging by a thread. And then the next time I got in touch with them, they're like, "We've given up on this project." But it's such a shame that, now you're mentioning this stuff. It's like, now there's an audience who would the website doesn't even work anymore. I tried to get in touch with them to say like what can we do? Can we access the code or do something? Because this is just too good to let go. But they haven't actually responded recently. But I had all these different ideas for things you could just live. I was even thinking of almost like a TV show where I guess like a sort of Big Brother style thing or something, but where you can, the audience can just pay for something to happen just by pressing a switch, make the lights go out, and everything has a market as well. It's like the current cost for this, in 1 hour, someone gets to make the lights go out, but who's it going to be, or which thing is going to get, which, experience is going to get the most money. That was obviously trying to find something kind of trivial that people might sort of understand. But yeah, beyond that, the utility of Lightning astounds me. But I'm out of the loop, but I also just keep hearing not great stuff about Lightning being centralized, having payment channels that need to be kept open. And I'm just wondering what's being kind of done about that. Like, how is there going to be like a open Lightning network that never goes anywhere?
Well, I can't really comment too much on Lightning, but what you've just described is, definitely possible on-chain using these kind of Modscription techniques that we've been talking about. So, where users instruct. So, effectively, the best way to think about it is an ordinal can be an access point. So, by owning the ordinal, you own access to whatever use case you can imagine. So, for example, for my bonsai currently, the only access it gives you is to grow on your own canvas. But what you just described could be entirely on-chain, where
I see
there's an ordinal that everyone is looking at with all your switches. But I could, if I buy one of the collection, I now have access to the master ordinal. So, for example, if I, let's say, reinscribed some coordinates onto my access ordinal, it would then turn on that square on the master ordinal.
Okay, because this is also another thing that I worked on early in Stacks was called Stacksboard, and it's a similar idea, kind of reversed, but what you're saying, so you can access these pixels and then you put what you want on those pixels. So it's like a billboard.
You could do something cool, because I think C12 might be able to confirm, but I think that currently there's an endpoint. Can we see the fees paid on the? I feel like the fees paid on the inscription it is available definitely on the new update. So, for example, you could turn it into like an almost an auction, or there could be a threshold. But like, if I put it in top left square, but C12 puts in top left square and pays a higher fee, then his gets priority over mine. So there's all kinds of things you could do involving investing value into it and making it. Now, the thing that really stood out to me about what you said is the website you were talking about has gone offline. Once it's an ordinal, an inscription, it will never go offline.
Yeah, I mean, that just really made me think. As you started saying that, I was thinking, yes, so this is what might have been missing from that, is that you could make that as a collection. But interestingly, I was also just thinking about the gamification, thinking you could make it as a collection, but obviously every grid is wired differently. So no two ones have exactly the same combination to do the same things, if you know what I mean. It's like it almost creates a kind of a fun game, yes, where the controls are just changed depending on.
The potentially even cooler scenario, which is what I was envisioning, is there's one ordinal that everyone can view and everyone can access via their like key ordinal.
So that's what this is on the screen. I don't know if you can see this that I'm showing now. So that's what Stacksboard was. So the idea is, as you can see, a lot of people have failed to update, and this was also, this is like a combination. There's like servers here so people can access their pictures, but this could now just be purely on-chain stuff that you can say, okay, now you effectively have, whether it's temporary through payments or when you first inscribe it, you just get this area, but then you have the ability to change what is being displayed here. And then you can update that with a transaction. You just send a transaction, you update the link, and now maybe you've got these 4 or 6 or 8 sections together. In fact, kind of like I've done in the middle there, I created a thing for the Stacks project we've been working on with. This is number 1, called Narcotics, where I actually managed to purchase 3 or even 4 separate sort of plots that I could then join together into a single image, just using some programmatic stuff. But yeah, this would be really cool as an inscription that exists. So when you're looking, people can look at the main inscription, but then the main inscription is going to change based on what the users do. We should definitely talk about this more. This is some good.
I mean, there's 2 ways I could see this working. Would be either it's based on the fees paid on the reinscription, which means it's kind of it works in a nice way because the only people getting the money are the miners, so it's kind of supporting the network by paying higher fees to get your slot on there. The other option, which is kind of what I did so I took C12's postage idea, where he was using the digits of the postage to control aspects of the ordinal. But with the flowers, I realized that instead of using a few sats to change the digits, what if you had to put like a significant amount of sats in, so it becomes almost like an investment, or it reminds me a bit of staking. So for my flowers, you only need to pay about $7. You invest $7, you attach $7 to the flower, and it grows some more petals. But if you want the next upgrade, you have to attach 10 times as many. So it's like, so you could do that with your grid idea. For any grid, I can inscribe my coordinates, and then I attach postage. Whoever currently has the highest postage, their image shows. And then if I need my money back, I pull my postage back out, and then someone else's image would show.
Yeah, this is great. I mean, it's not what I'm working on right now, but you just made me think of it. This isn't the SparkShot thing either that I was talking about. This is called Stacksboard. But yeah, I definitely think that you're onto something there. I mean, this is something I think one of you mentioned about ordinals that communicate. This is something that I've been really running myself over the rack, over it. Just trying to think of ways to do it. In the early days, I was thinking, if I have a Satoshi and I have a number, and I know the number of that Satoshi, and I'm able to access that through some endpoint, then I was imagining I could build a set of code that I can update at will, because what I've done is I've just built a little list of kind of null checks. When the program first runs, it goes, check this Satoshi. Of course, there's nothing on that Satoshi. The endpoint just returns with null, so it just moves to the next line, the next line, the next line. I could build 20 of those in before the program runs. And then I was thinking that I could then, at some point in the future, a bit like kind of writing people's names on the boards, inscribing the names on the board when they've won the cup or whatever. But then at that point, I inscribe that Satoshi, which this program checks constantly, but it just never executes. There's never anything there. And then one day, and it's the last one in the list, so I've still got 19 more changes I could do. But then one day, it goes through this list that never does anything, and suddenly there's a diversion, which probably goes out and back again. But
I think what you're describing already exists, which is what C12 was talking about with being able to update his code. So I remember thinking exactly the same thing as you last year, but they've added an endpoint where, so you can refer to a reinscription number on a SAT. So like you will inscribe 10 inscriptions on the same SAT, and you can refer to inscription 1, 2, 3, 4. But they've added a -1, which always refers to the last reinscription. So actually, you wouldn't be limited to 20, like you said. This is what both me and C12 are using. It means that while we control the parent collection parent or another SAT that we designate, we can continue to update the collection.
Okay, we've got to carry on this conversation, because this also ties in with other things to do with music, because with music collections, I'd love for artists to be able to communicate through that, through their collections.
This actually brings me to an idea that I wanted to discuss in general about like how we could have like innovative features just through updating how the like Audionals explorers and exchanges display stuff. So for example, currently when you submit a collection on Magikey, then you give them a list of inscription IDs, right? But imagine if instead of that, you give them a list of Satoshis, and then anybody on each of these Satoshis, anybody can inscribe whatever they want, and they can keep reinscribing, and whatever latest inscription is on each Satoshi is like what's shown in the collection. So suddenly you have a collection that can be constantly evolving and constantly being updated, and it acts kind of like the page the stacks board thing, but you can like actively buy any of these pieces within it and inscribe something new on it, which I think would be super interesting.
I think that's already possible, right? With as long as you do what I'm having to do, which is as long as you inscribe the collection on target SATs, then it already knows it can look at itself effectively. So I think that's already possible. It's kind of what my collections are doing in a way. It's just, for example, my bonsai, they can only inscribe emojis, which are then interpreted into growing a tree. But there's nothing to stop the system being used where they inscribe an image and then it just shows that image. In fact,
that's true. Yeah.
This is interesting because actually this has actually already been done. Now there's a builder. So I thought I was the first person to make Audionals that could read their children or reinscriptions and then respond. But I actually found a builder who since asked me not to mention them because they basically already done what you described, but they kind of fell out with the project run and felt they were going down the wrong path. So they've asked me.
This is why it just needs to be open source, everybody. Open source.
The good news is we know how to do it. I just rediscovered it myself, but then I later found someone had actually already done it before me.
Yeah.
So I already claimed to be the first person to do that, but it's possible now, is what I'm saying. So
amazing.
I can describe their collection though. They have these kind of like little 3D cards, but then if you reinscribe an image, it would appear in the card, like it would also rotate in 3D. So that's pretty much exactly what you were just describing, I think.
Yeah. Well, there's. Yeah. If I just can simply. So there's just one more benefit to the thing I was describing specifically, is that you can do pretty much free distribution and free airdrops of that, because if you define a selection, if you define a collection as a selection of sats, then I can select some sat from your wallet, some sat from my wallet, some sat from Jim's wallet, and I don't need to send anyone anything. I just submit this list, and everybody gets a piece of that collection for free without any transactions involved. And I think that's a big part of that, where you can do massive scale airdrops for free,
But so
just defining set ranges.
So just to quantify that, though, that is still using the same SAT. So it's like a previous inscription turns into a different inscription. It's not like you don't get an additional object, kind of. If you
No. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's using all the same stats.
Yeah, this is because the thing I've been thinking about really was more to do with what I'd really like is to have to showcase this idea that I've been talking again with people for probably for 10 years since I first found out about crypto. And I remember saying to people, it's the first, one of my first things I thought of was like a yacht lost in the ocean. I was like, all they got to do is have a satellite phone, and then they can send a transaction, because there's now satellites up there, and they can send a transaction with their coordinates and they can be found. And I was like, this is like literal, incredible technology. I've just lost myself now. I've even forgotten where I was headed with that. I got carried away with the yacht idea.
You sounded like you were going to talk about maybe giving people the ability to create new inscriptions.
Yes. So it's the idea of with an album, something we've been selling to artists for ages is this gets you closer to your fans. It creates a number of levels, and again DMT takes it even further, but it's just a number of ways for interaction. But what I was really looking for was the ability for, say, someone like French Montana to put together an album, get out like 1 million copies of these things, again probably in a way like this, an album that exists as a SAT that just has things that can be updated, and then having this ability for the artist to single someone out, to be like, you'd all better be listening to the single today at this time, because I'm going to send one of you a message and we're going to have a conversation. I don't know if it can even, if that can be facilitated 2 ways. I'm assuming through messaging that's easy enough for it just to have actually set up. It's not going to be private, but to set up a kind of conversation where an artist can just reach out and go, hey, I'm sending you tickets, blah, blah, blah. That level of being able to just interact across an ordinal, and then even those things then becoming tickets or whatever, those serving multi-purposes, and even being like, there's 1 million of these, but obviously only 10,000 if you can come to the concert tonight. But if you're coming to the concert, go through this process and your inscription becomes the ticket for tonight. So we can differentiate between people who all have the same inscription, but some specific inscriptions that say, yeah, but I'm now the ticket as well tonight, sort of kind of thing.
I think this is already possible. Like I was at one point working on a kind of very crude social media built onto a collection of SATs. So there's nothing, for example, stopping. You could reinscribe on your SAT the ID number of my SAT with a message, and my ordinals, everyone's ordinal is continually reading.
I mean, I'm talking off-chain here, to be fair. I'm talking not off-chain, but I'm talking about if 2 people are operating their programs simultaneously on the chain and there is messaging. So I have messaging that is being read by 1 million different inscriptions. They're all following the same channel, but they also have their own IDs. Can I, as the holder of the master, say send a message that's only going to be viewed by number 672563, and only if they're looking at it now, obviously, because I'm not writing. This is a live conversation I'm going to maybe have with a fan. So it's like, as long as I say to everyone, you've got to be looking at the thing to see it, because there's nothing in the memory. But that's feasible, right?
The issue is there's nothing private. So
it's nothing private. It's nothing private, but it still is to a specific person. I mean, most of these things, they're never private. People tweet them straight away, but it still means a person could single someone out. They can't give them the information they want, and then could that person then send a message back guaranteeing that is that person that's responded? For example, yes,
because they can reinscribe it on their SAT, which only they have access to reinscribe.
Yeah.
I just want to go back to what C12 said, because I think what you just described, C12, is potentially a revolutionary idea, and I think it is possible because So let's say you get 1,000 of your community to tell you their SAT numbers.
Mhm.
All you need to do is inscribe what like is a relatively very simple instruction, because it would just pull. So your collection number 1 would pull the inscription ID from the SAT number person 1 gave you, and then it would just display the last reinscription on their SAT. So as you put it, you found a way to airdrop.
Yeah, exactly. You can
without
do like
on anything.
yeah, you can airdrop to like 100,000 addresses for 0 cost, right?
And can you could you also like, so say like if someone wants to recycle their rugs, let's say, like they're just the inscriptions that they're done with, can you repurpose that SAT as well?
Oh yeah. Each SAT can be part of like 10 different collections. That's the beauty of this.
Even if you
So,
don't
like,
hold it to begin with, you can still link to it if they
exactly.
did the inscription.
Like,
That's awesome, man. That's like
exactly.
full on recycling. That's amazing. You know, just go, hey, just bring us your rugs and we'll set you into these new collections.
Yeah, and this whole thing can be like used in so many different ways, because I just like described like the airdrop thing, but you can do kind of similar things as a kind of reputation systems where I inscribe a list of SATs, and those SATs can be like I know SATs that on which some collection is inscribed, and that can be used to mean that like, oh, I kind of give this collection a thumbs up, you know.
Yeah.
And then you can kind of create like a on-chain reputation for certain collectibles and stuff like that, or
I mean, this is
or like achievement
advertising
badges
as well. This is kind of like, you know, get the most valuable collection that's out there, strike this deal with everybody, and then it becomes a kind of a standard, like a billboard that's in people's wallet. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, you don't even have to strike a deal. You could literally just create a collection, and then if they choose to reinscribe stuff on that SAT, it would then appear in your new collection. And my main point, Cedar, is I think this is already possible. You don't need Magic Eden to change their system, because you inscribe the code onto your collection of stats, but it gives access to it's still. So the code you inscribe has an inscription ID, which is the list you give to Magic Eden. And
no, because all those SATs, they don't have to be inscribed, right? And then they can be perpetually reinscribed. So it's all possible on chain. Like on chain, it will all kind of can work. But in terms of like being able to trade this, you will need to, you'll need this feature where you can define collections but by SAT numbers, and that was actually like my kind of idea for how like fungible tokens could work on Bitcoin. Like, so instead of like having runes or anything.
Are you saying that this does exist in terms of for developers? It's just there's no marketplaces supporting it.
Yeah, like it's impossible to create like list it as a collection and make it like trade and all that, because you can also like do the same thing for like meme tokens or anything. Like, you just define a SAT range, like you define a list of satoshis and say these satoshis are Dogecoin, right? And that's it, and that's Dogecoin, and then suddenly like hundreds of thousands of people can have that for free with 0 airdrop fees. And that's actually, that's like this has already been done. This is what, I'm not sure if you know the Saturn project with the RAG token. This is exactly what they did, and it worked very well. But then everybody was so hyped about runes that everybody forgot that this existed. But
I mean, I've always thought the runestone collection is a little bit bigger than 100,000, so that might be an interesting thing to take a chunk out of. To just say, hey, this is just open to runestones, but if you want to convert your runestone into like a song, because I guess it sort of it also burns runestones because they're not recoverable back into what they used to be. I guess, are they? I guess they could just reinscribe. It's not. it wouldn't be part of the collection because that collection is based on IDs rather than sat numbers, I guess. So.
Oh, but like you could each runestone is on a sat number, and then you could use those sat numbers for creating a new collection on that, and there's nothing stopping it from being like two things at once or many things at once. Like that's the kind of magical things about ordinals, that like each sat can be 100 different things at the same time and belong in 100 different collections. And that's actually like a collaboration that we did with Zed, where a bee from like the Bitcoin Bees collection got reinscribed with a like a piece from Palindrome's IO collection, and the single sat contains items from both collections at the same time, and that
Nice. Nice. Well,
and you could go like super crazy with that.
yeah, I mean, we
And
definitely got to carry on this
can you-
conversation.
I'll just ask a little question about that.
Yeah.
Can the viewer choose between which reinscription to look at?
I think that would be great. That would be great. But that's I think something on the like explorers and exchanges to implement, because I think that's something that should be done on chain, or like off chain rather. Like like when you go on Magic Eden, you go into your wallet, it gives you like an option to shuffle between the different reinscriptions on a single thing.
Yeah, you can actually see them on some browsers. You can see all the reinscriptions. I've got a couple like that.
Yeah, you can, but they are kind of separated, right? Like they're individual items. Whereas I thought what you meant was like having a single item where you like you double click it and you see the next piece on that.
That is kind of what I was asking.
You could definitely, well, you don't need a platform for that. You just code that into, like similar to what we said before, you just have one inscription that reads all the reinscriptions, and then when you click it, it just displays the next one.
Yeah, you can do that, but the problem with this is that it's not like backwards compatible. Like if you already have some inscriptions, that one like you need a new inscription to contain all these, right? Whereas what I'm
Because that was
describing,
my first thought, was you just build into the inscription. You say, okay, you've got a key that if you press 1, it shows this inscription, presses 2, but of course you can't. This is about not changing the inscription from that side. So.
Yeah. And actually, like I feel like currently the UX for reinscriptions on places like Magic Eden is pretty bad in general, because let's say you have 5 different items reinscribed on the same sat, and like one of these items is super valuable and one of these items is junk, and then you can accidentally sell the junk for low price, and it will also sell your high value item. So it's very easy to like shoot yourself in the foot with reinscriptions this way. But if they were
This is literally an issue with the bonsai. Is every emoji to grow new branches becomes a child inscription, or a reinscription of the bonsai canvas. So I'm worried someone will think, I'm going to clear out all this junk, like you say, because their wallet ends up full of emojis. But if they send one emoji, all the inscriptions move, including the bonsai, because they're just sending the sat.
Exactly, and ideally the Magic Eden should hide these reinscriptions like behind the main piece, and then allow the user to like browse them with like opening a list when you like double click it or something. And
yeah, the current way the platforms work have given people the impression that they are sending inscriptions, which isn't the case. They are sending sats.
yeah, exactly.
And I find myself in these conversations all the time. It's actually really hard to get your head around the fact you can have an entire family tree of like parent-child provenance all on one sat, or spread between multiple sats, is like 2 layers effectively.
Yeah,
You can only send the sat.
I actually, like, as part of some experiments, like inscribed 10K collections on a single set, which is funny.
That sounds intriguing as well. I think I'm going to have to wrap it up, even though I feel like we could go on for hours, but this is already hitting the 2-hour mark now. But I'd love to get you guys back. I mean, one other thing I wanted to mention was about something that the Astral Architect showed me, just to kind of sow this seed with you guys. But he showed me, and this was also using the Unisat wallet but he has an inscription. I haven't got it to hand right now, but it is in one of my previous shows, the show with Astral Architect. I think it's towards the end of the show we spoke about it, and he showed me the inscription with the inscription number, so you can go and check it out. I don't have a Unisat wallet, so I haven't played with it, but he showed me, he logged in with his Unisat wallet, and this ordinal instantly displayed all of his NFT holdings, which just again struck me as something, if that was that simple, that's just a really interesting way of doing kind of gating, personal gating, because I'm just showing some stuff on screen now. This is to do with the player. I built this sort of PFP idea, generative PFP, where actually in the very bottom right corner, you can only barely see it, but actually it's just within the JPEG image is embedded the details for programmatically recreating this image by basically just sending some instructions into the audio player. Regardless of the audio, it's just saying just run, here are all of your traits, the different color settings which have been applied to each instrument, simulate the execution of the program up until this point, and then produce this image, so that we could produce this kind of PFP collection without actually generating any images. It's all just things that people have picked by watching their song and listening to it and going through it. But what I really wanted was the possibility of restricting people so they could only actually do this on their own NFT, because at the moment, you can open any one of them, and when it gets into this particular mode, you press the P key and it captures this kind of profile pic with its details in the bottom corner. And what I really liked the idea of was people having to actually log into their Unisat wallet, and it wouldn't allow you to create the PFP unless that Unisat wallet goes, okay, the NFT that you're looking at right now, the executing file, is in this wallet that's logged in, so let that P key do its thing and produce it. Otherwise, don't even define it, basically. Yeah, I'm just interested for you guys to tell me if you can I'll try and find the link and send it to you so you can have a look. I just thought there's some
that sounds super interesting.
I'll find the link and I'll send it over, and then maybe next time we can chat about it. Any final thoughts from any of you guys?
Well, can I try and summarize my list that I posted earlier in 1 minute?
Do it.
Just for people who are listening and wondering where Audionals is going, what we now have are Audionals that users can interact with. We have Audionals that can communicate with each other, and we have Audionals that can read from the blockchain activity and synchronize themselves and so on. So ultimately, we now just have this in what I see as like an entire computing system on Audionals. So really, there's not much that we can't do right now. I think that the main limitation is interaction is slow, because it's on chain. So when you interact, you have to send a transaction, it has to confirm. Apart from that, though, the advantage is it being on chain. If I die of sleep deprivation in the next day, my flowers will continue to upgrade, will continue to be breedable forever, will continue to be interactable by the owners of the flowers. That's the big thing here, is we've got this whole cycle of interactivity now, but it's entirely autonomous on the blockchain. Once it's inscribed and it's running, it will carry on forever. So I just think it's such an exciting space to be in. That would be my concluding thoughts.
I 100% agree. It's very exciting, and it's like we're witnessing the spark of evolution in on-chain digital terms, and we're right here witnessing it. It's very exciting. Any of your other guys got any final thoughts?
I pretty much agree with everything that Zed said, and I feel like we're all kind of building our own projects, which are kind of self-contained collections, but at the same time, each of what we're doing is kind of potentially contributing to something bigger in the future, where in the future somebody will be able to use everything that we've done and kind of remix these, or use individual pieces as ingredients to create more complex things and structures. And I'm really looking forward to the future of all that, because it seems like the possibilities are pretty much endless at this point.
I think there is a neat Venn diagram where we have technological overlaps that are all sort of in alignment. So yeah, looking forward to keeping up in touch with what you guys are getting on with, and seeing what we can do together as well. And how about you, Solom?
Yeah, it's been a great conversation. I've learned a lot. Thanks for having me up. I look forward to connecting with everyone in the chat and seeing if you can help me build my dream.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks a lot, everyone, for joining. And go and follow these guys. I think, have you posted? I've shown your Twitters, I think. In fact, I'll post it afterwards. I'll get the Bitcoin Live update to add the handles, although they were in the original post, weren't they? So look at the original post and follow these guys. As you've just heard through this conversation, this is where the real evolution takes place, is people with these forward thinking, take no prisoners, don't take no for an answer kind of attitudes in this space, that I think is just going to prove that people with that attitude are going to thrive, because I think it's like a force, and when people realize that this is evolutionary, just as these guys were saying, that it's a huge, powerful thing, and the more we can just embrace it as a community as well, then we can evolve this system and this technology at hyper speed. And that's why I think it's really important to kind of be open and transparent and share ideas, try and share technologies, because hearing about things like people falling out and then really great ideas just kind of turning to dust, it just kills me when we're in this kind of dream environment for people to share and always get attribution. It's on chain. The previous rules are out the door. Trust is not something you have to worry about anymore. It's like, just do it. You will get what is yours if you just do it in this environment. So great to meet you all, and thanks a lot for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Jim.
Take care, guys. Speak soon.
Take care, mate.
Cool. Okay, so I will all on my own. I think I'm going to close it out with Based. Based, we're going to do some sort of a remix competition on this, I reckon, soon. But let's play this out. Thanks for coming. That was super interesting. I think. I didn't mean to do that. Oh no. Whoopsie. Sorry. So that was super interesting. There was some full-on ideas there. Like, wow, like the whole Stacksboard thing. It's like, these things could just be ported to Audionals at this point. I got to stop being surprised at being so surprised. This tech is just going to move exponentially, I think. So buckle up. Thanks for coming.
Based. Based. B1. B. Based. 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 B1. B based. Based.